All right, so the trade-off between tax and permits. So with taxes, the government must set the optimal tax rate. So they have to know exactly the external cost, and they need to be able to set that, right? So they're going to end up knowing the price, but they won't know level of abatement. If they don't know marginal cost of abatement. Right, so if we look at a diagram for taxes, this is the cost per unit. This is the level of abatement. The government's setting this taxes. So they first of all have to figure out the actual optimal tax rate they should set. But oftentimes this is proprietary information, and firms aren't usually willing to tell the government how much it's going to cost them to reduce their pollution. I mean, they're probably going to tell them it costs a lot. We're not going to be able to survive if you make us pay this tax. Because they want to keep the tax as low as possible. Oops. So let's say the government thinks that this is the marginal cost of abatement. Well, then they know that this is how much it's going to get abated. But let's say that the firms actually have a lower cost of abatement. Well, then they're only going to reduce this much. So I can label these points. So Q maybe 0, Q1, or maybe the costs are higher. Marginal cost prime, and they're going to reduce it by a lot more. So if the government doesn't know the marginal cost of abatement, they're not sure. They know the price they're putting on carbon, or whatever pollution this is, but they don't know how much reduction they're going to get unless they know exactly what these firms' marginal costs are, which is probably not going to be the case. Now we can turn our attention to the permits. And this is the case where we're going to know the price, we're going to know the quantity, but maybe not the price of permits. So with permits, the market for permits determines the price of pollution. And what's determining the demand in that market for permits is the marginal cost of the firms. So again, if they don't know the marginal cost for firms, they're not sure where that demand curve is for permits. So here's the price, this is the market for permits. Here's the quantity, the government selling a set amount of them. And so maybe they think this is the marginal cost, this is the demand curve as a result of what they think is the marginal cost of abatement. So they think that this is going to be the price of permits. But if the marginal costs of abatement are higher, then we get a higher price. If the marginal cost of abatement was lower, we'd get a lower cost of permits. And so here the government knows the amount of pollution they're going to get because they're just issuing a certain number of permits, or legally going to get it anyway, but they don't know the price. So they know the quantity of abatement, I guess if that's the difference between how many how many permits they issue and what, greenhouse gases or whatever that pollution was before. So they know the quantity of abatement, but not the price. If they do not know the marginal cost of abatement for firms. And so there's kind of this trade-off here, right? So with taxes, you know the price, but you don't know how much is going to be reduced. With permits, you know how much is going to be reduced, but you don't know the price. Because usually we don't know the reason for both of these unknowns is that we don't know the marginal cost of abatement for firms. It's usually not something they'd share and something not known by the government.